Hello, welcome to the Sarawak English Language Education Symposium 2020 virtual event. I am super excited to have you here. Excited about all the amazing sharing that we're gonna have today. My name is Sharon and I'll be your host today. Here with me, teacher Ko Chung Wei. Without further ado, I would like to welcome teacher Ko Chung Wei.
Hi everybody, I'm Coach Chung Wei here. So today I'll be talking to you about remote teaching during COVID-19. So basically I won't be giving it to you, let's say we'll explore it together. Right, we'll explore multi-method solution on how to do remote teaching during the COVID-19 pandemic. To watch this very short video clip.
Situasi semasa wabak ini memerlukan tindakan drastik diambil bagi memulihkan keadaan secepat mungkin. Dan untuk itu kerajaan memutuskan untuk melaksanakan Perintah Kawalan Pergerakan mulai 18 Mac 2020 iaitu lusa hingga 31 Mac 2020 di seluruh negara. Keempat ialah penutupan semua taska, sekolah kerajaan dan swasta, termasuklah sekolah harian, sekolah berasrama penuh, sekolah antarabangsa, pusat tahfiz dan lain-lain institusi pendidikan rendah, menengah dan pra-universiti.
And what changed
pengumuman tersebut serta takwim persekolahan tahun 2020, KPM telah memutuskan bahawa semua sekolah termasuk kolej vocational di bawah KPM akan ditutup bermula pada 9 November 2020 sehingga ke hari akhir persekolahan tahun ini iaitu pada 17 Disember 2020 bagi negeri kumpulan A dan 18 Disember 2020 bagi negeri kumpulan B. Pengajaran dan pembelajaran akan tetap diteruskan secara home-based learning mengikut kesesuaian guru dan murid.
Okay, so what did you feel at that time? What did you do? How is your experience of home-based learning, the so-called home-based learning by our Ministry of Education? So what happened at that time? What did you do? I would like to see the chat. Hold on, yeah, I could not access the chat just for a while. Okay, there. All right, you could share it out on the chat box. So, okay, Ms. Tan said in disbelief and found it hard to comprehend as it's never happened before. Yes, that's right. All of us were in disbelief. And basically, I was in a panicky mode actually. The announcement on 8th of November was so sudden. That's true, David. We are all stunned. That's right. Okay, so sorry to hear that, Sophie. Your line is terrible. But yes, if you have terrible internet line, it will be very difficult for us to conduct remote teaching or the so-called home-based learning. Okay, so yes, this is how most of us feel. Adam said nervous, scared, challenging, and it's interesting, exciting as time goes by. And I totally agree with you, Adam. So yeah, broken my arm and cracked some of the ribs, so kind of sad. That's what Hyri said. Okay, did plan to do online classes with my pupils. But you're suddenly involved in an accident. So you see, during remote teaching or home-based learning, all of us have different challenges. So it may happen to the teacher, it might happen to the students. And people outside there do not know. So let's say if it is during a normal school day, and if Cikgu Hairul broke his arm during an accident, I'm very sure he will be asked to to stay at home, and his classes would be teach in for him. But during remote teaching, we could not actually ask somebody to teach in for us because we are no longer physically there in school. So that is a very big challenge. Just go with the flow, accept the challenges. Okay, that's what Agnes said. Yep, that's right. So we all have to accept the challenges. So you like it or not, you still have to do it because it is part of our core business as teacher. So now I would like you to ask yourself this question, and I'm going to trigger the poll now. Does remote teaching, or our minister called home-based learning, does it work for you? I would call it remote teaching rather than home-based learning. In a while, I'm going to explain why. Okay, so does it work for you? You could vote on the poll now. It works very well. It depends on the students, or no, it doesn't work at all. And if you have any other comments, you could type it out in the chat box and I'm going to read it out. Okay, it depends. That's right, Amir. So depends on what? There's no right and wrong answer to this because some people might find remote teaching work very well for them. Some people might not. Okay, so we have 26%, more than 50% voted already. Okay, and if you like to comment on this, you could type it out on the chat. Okay, 32 of us voted, and I can see that most of us, almost more than 90%, okay, 91% of us thinks that, well, remote teaching depends a lot on the students. There's only 11% who said that it works very well, and 5% who said it doesn't work at all. Agnes said it depends on the teachers, and I do agree it depends on the teachers. So let's say if during that time, when you're supposed to do your remote teaching and you were involved in something else. Touch wood, but let's say if you're involved in an accident or you're being quarantined or something bad happened, you might not be able to conduct your remote teaching at all. Okay? And it depends a lot on the pupils. So some pupils might not have access to technology, they might not have access to gadgets, and we could not go to them physically because, well, it's a lockdown. It's an MCO. All our movement are controlled. It works if we can trace our students. Unfortunately, those missing from HBL students remain untraceable on why are they not joining or why they are now, or where they are now actually. That's very true, Adam. I totally agree with that because I face the same problem as well. Okay, there are some students that cannot be traced no matter what you did to them. Okay, you could call them up and they will just ignore your phone calls. It happens to me many times. But the most important thing is we should not give up. And 83% has voted, so I'll end the poll now, and you can see that a lot of us think that it depends on the students. That's right, it depends a lot on the students, and yet at the same time, we can try to make it work. I would use the word try because I have not found one particular solution where you can get all 100% participation or attendance rate from the students. Okay, so I'll end the poll now. Okay, so you can see the result here. Okay, all right. So how in this particular session we'll explore how can we make ERT work and how to assess our students during ERT so that by the end of this session we will be better prepared when hopefully not, but when the next wave of pandemic hits us or whenever ERT is being triggered or activated. I use the term ERT because ERT stands for emergency remote teaching, and that is the term being used in the literature. Okay, then let's look at how some Malaysian teachers actually conduct their remote teaching. I'm very sure all these pictures are familiar to you. So we have teachers like Cikgu Nancy who conducted her remote teaching or her online live class by dressing up in nice, beautiful costume Okay, and I heard that today she dressed up as a superwoman, right? So unfortunately, we have also some teachers who tried his best to conduct an online class, and yet no students joined his class until his daughter complained on Twitter over here. And then you have some teachers who actually went to the student, deliver the learning task to them, like Cikgu Nasmi up here. And you have teachers who not only deliver the homework to them, to the students, but also stood at the gate and explained and give feedback to the students. And you have some teachers deep in the jungle who actually bring their students and the parents out to a place where they could get access to the internet. And yet you have a whole school approach where they call it as Roy Meet, where the school did not only deliver the learning tasks to the students, but they were there to coach the students on how to learn or how to get the task done. Okay, so these are some great efforts by Malaysian teachers to conduct remote teaching. And if you are one of them, give yourself a clap. Even if you are someone like, I can't remember his name, or even if you're someone who's just like our poor teacher here, who tried his best to conduct remote teaching, but it just somehow doesn't happen because the students refuse to join this class. Okay, and I see some chat. Okay, let me get to the chat. The participation is not very good, poor internet connection. Some pupils just could not join or do their work. However, I used to ask them to do in their FB textbook or workbook. That's excellent, Cikgu Sema, because this is what we are supposed to do. Okay? Now, we could not just totally ignore our students, even if they do not want to join in remote teaching, because it is part of our duty as a teacher to teach. Right, next I'm going to share with you why I call it as ERT and not home-based learning. Now, the term ERT is used in the literature to mean emergency remote teaching. It is a temporary shift of instructional delivery to an alternate delivery mode due to crisis. Notice the word that I've highlighted in red, the word temporary, alternate delivery mode due to crisis. And the most important word here appears again in the primary objective. It is not to recreate a robust educational ecosystem. So you should not compare your remote teaching to the e-learning, the MOOC platform that universities have done for their online classes, because that is how they do it, platform like edX, Coursera, if you're familiar. Okay, because that is not the main purpose. We do not aim to recreate a whole robust educational ecosystem, because that takes time, right? But rather, we are there to provide a temporary access to instruction that can be set up quickly and is reliably available during an emergency. Okay, the key word here, temporary, quick to set up, reliably available. So do not stress yourself out on how to conduct remote teaching when your students are not even participating. Okay, as compared to what is e-learning, I'm not going to go into this. So remember, our goal is not to provide a personalized learning centered, open, enjoyable, and interactive learning environment during remote teaching, because it is just not simply, ERT is just not e-learning. The only thing in common that I can see is that both ERT and e-learning do not happen in a physical classroom setting. So that's about it. But remember, ERT is activated in response to a crisis. It is not purposely designed to be remote. Okay, ERT is temporary. It's a temporary solution to a problem. Okay, it is not something that is there for the long term. So once the pandemic ends, we'll all return back to our normal physical classroom. We will not go on and carry out our remote teaching. And if you remember in March, when ERT first started, when school was first closed, we lacked resources. Some people might not even have a proper gadgets like a laptop or a handphone or even the microphone to conduct online classes. And they could not even go out and get them even if they have the money because shops are all closed. Okay? And ERT usually lack a full faculty support, unlike proper online learning. Right, let's say if you have joined courses by, let's say Coursera, they have proper a course system on conducting online learning. But it just simply doesn't happen during an emergency remote teaching scenario. Okay? And the keyword, another keyword here is that ERT is non-voluntary. The students do not choose to learn in a remote method. They do not choose not to come to school and to learn, right? It is not out of choice, unlike e-learning. Okay? So if you bear these differences in mind, you will know that whatever we do during ERT, if it works for one student, that is good enough. Okay, so how do we make ERT work? This is the key element that I found, which is frequent communication. Okay, I made the mistake of not communicating with the parents when schools were first closed. I went straight and communicated with the students in my classes, and I asked the students to contact, I just asked one student to contact their other friends and set up a group. That is what I did. I did not contact the parents, so I could not reach out to a lot of other students because some students just simply do not have the gadgets. Some of them were simply in the lost. They do not know what is happening. Okay? So I made that mistake initially. And if I were to redo my whole ERT, my whole ERT right from the beginning, I would have contacted the parents first. I would have sent them a WhatsApp or SMS first before I contacted the kids. So that if the parents are in the know, the parents could be more cooperative and help out in trying to get their children to at least learn a bit when schools were closed. Okay? And another important point is for the school administrators to communicate with the parents as well. Because if, let's say, Miss Call contacted the parents and the students and tell them that, okay, I'm going to have an English class on every Tuesday. And that only comes from me. It doesn't come from all the other teachers. So the parents will be wondering, why is this Miss Call so busybody, wanted to conduct classes when we are all suffering, like we're all without food and things like that. But if the instructions comes from the school administrators, it gives a sense of authority to the teacher to conduct ERT. Okay? And how do I contact parents? I'll send them WhatsApp messages like this to inform them after a few weeks of not participating in the task. I'll inform the parents that the kids did not do this task. What are the problems? And if you notice the time, I sent out messages to parents during daytime. Well, if it so happened that they reply at night and I wasn't sleeping, I will reply then. Okay, sometimes you might need to send out messages in different languages because not all parents are able to understand BM or English or Chinese. So if I know how to type out in Bahasa Iban or Bahasa Bidayuh, I would have put that in as well. Okay? Now, the second thing is, apart from frequent communication, is we must be flexible and creative in finding solutions to the problems that we have at hand. Not everyone has the same problem. So therefore, there is no one particular way of getting things done. There's no one particular size that fits all. So we always need to develop a contingency plan. I'm going to share with you what happened during my ERT experience. Okay, this is what I did initially. when the announcement for school to close on 18th of when MCO started on 18th of March, because it was a school holiday and the following week was a Monday, on the 23rd of March, I sent out this message to one of my class, okay, through WhatsApp. And for me, this is an ERT session. I told them to do correction to their essay, which I have sent it to them to their personal WhatsApp, and to send it back to me. So that was fine. I do not have a problem with that. Then I tried the same method with a reading correction task. And it becomes unmanageable and chaotic at the end of it. Because I have 20 plus students in this class, and kids keep on, sending their answers in the class group, and it becomes very messy. And it took me a few days to give them feedback. I could not give them immediate feedback because I could not find where their answers are. It's all over the place. That is when I thought of a different solution, which is to create my entire ERT session or lesson on Google Form. I did not just give students the work. I put in some explanation in my Google Form as well as some recording from YouTube and so on. Okay, then things becomes much more manageable, but I always give them an alternative because some students claim that they could not access the Google Form due to certain reasons, like they have limited handphone capabilities and so on. So I always provide students with an alternative, and I allow them to send the answers to me through personal WhatsApp, not in the classroom, because if they send in the classroom, it's simply unmanageable. Okay, then after a while, you get too many Google Form links, and not all your students will actually complete the task on the same day, or in the same week. So you have students in the third week asking for the task in the first week, or students asking the task in the second week. After a while, it gets very confusing, both for you and your students, so you do not know which link to send it to the student. So what I did was, I compiled everything into something called a Google site. So this is more or less like my management, my LMS, my learning management system. Some of you might ask, why don't I use Google Classroom? Now remember, it's during an emergency. So not all the students are being trained or being able to access Google Classroom, but most people will be able to access something on the internet, like a site, like Google site. So basically, I compiled everything and put them into the whole Google site platform. Okay, so it's basically something like an e-learning module for the students. So they could just click on it and access whatever task that they have not done and get it done. All right. Then I discovered Zoom and Google Meet. Okay. And if you notice initially, I'm just going to show you a short snippet of my first Zoom class with my students. Okay. It is a speaking class.
I would say a few of you did quite
well. If you notice, I did not turn on
from the
my
first,
camera because personally, I'm a very camera shy person. I feel very awkward speaking to thin air. Okay, so I do not want to show my awkward face to my students. So initially, I do not turn on my camera, and you'll find that a lot of your students would refuse to turn on their camera even if you ask them to. It's for exactly that same reason.
Meeting on Zoom until now. Okay, so I'm going to select.
So if you notice, I also sound very awkward in my first Zoom session with my students. All right, so anyway, after the whole ERT session on Zoom or Google Meet, I would also post up the task on WhatsApp with a link to the recording of the lesson in case some students would want to listen to it, and get access to the same materials that you have taught the rest of your other students, right? And I find that WhatsApp can actually help us if you want to do a speaking lesson, because kids could just press the record button, record their own voice, and send back their speech to us. Okay. Now, this is during the second phase of ERT, when schools were closed for the second time. Then I discovered a platform called Quizzes, and I learned how to use it. And if you notice, I'm going to share with you a snippet of the lesson done on Quizzes.
I'm sure you're familiar with this question already, because some of you have attempted it in class before this, right? So in the next part, you're going to look at 2 essays and tell me which essay that you think will receive a higher mark. These essays are written by your friends. So which essay do you think will receive a higher mark? Okay, are you able to read the essay? I'm sure you're familiar with this question already, because some of you have attempted it in class.
I'm very sorry. I do not know what happened to the video recording. And this is something that will happen if you are trying to conduct a live session. Things happen, well, initially during your own tryout, it does not happen, but then somehow it happens during the real session itself. So you always have a contingency plan. So what happened during that class was, I put up stuff on Quizzes, and I shared the screen with the students. So the students would have to work on the task on Quizzes, and then some kids say they cannot see they could not see the writing clearly. It's a bit too small. So I prepared it in a different platform called Jamboard, which I could actually just zoom in, because you could not zoom in properly on a Quizzes lesson. Now, after the lesson, that was the first alternative that I offered to the student. Okay, and after the lesson, what I did was I used back the same Quizzes lesson, but I turned it into a homework. No longer a live class, but a homework that I shared with the students in the link in their WhatsApp. And I've recorded the lesson on Google Meet and uploaded on YouTube and shared with the students. So the students could actually just listen to the recording of the class and work on the Quizzes lesson. I mean the Quizzes task as well. Okay, so it's just as if they are attending the live class, but at a different time. Now, of course, you have some students who will tell you that not enough internet data to access things like that. So again, I provide them the third alternative, which is to ask them just to send me the task on WhatsApp, and if they have any problem, they could just ask and clarify. Okay, so those are my different solutions to the problems that I have at hand. So if you have noticed, I did not stick to one particular method or approach. And before I move on to the third point, I've seen a chat just now that I was trying to access. Okay, I'll just read out the chat from DK. Need to adapt our communication skills for effective remote learning. Let students know we are thinking of them. Send them a note using WhatsApp, tele, or via email. Share with students what you're missing about seeing them in person and how excited you'll be to see them again soon. In the end, distance does not prohibit collaboration among students and teachers. There are various tools to communicate with. That's right. Okay. That's right. I'm very sorry if the image is blurred. Okay, I just see this now. I'm very sorry if the image is blurred because they are basically screenshots. Okay, I'm really sorry about that. But I hope the wordings itself are not blurred. Okay, the third point is to establish routines, and this is particularly important in a remote teaching setting. Okay, without a routine, everyone will be at a loss. Students do not know when they should go for certain classes.
Teachers do not know when they should conduct the classes and how many times they should conduct it per week for how long, right? So it's important for us to establish a routine during ERT. And the best way to establish routine is by the school putting up a timetable, right? So I'm very lucky that my school supported us in ERT by giving us a proper ERT timetable, which is not according to our usual timetable teaching in physical class. Okay, if you notice, classes starts from 8 to 10, knowing that students don't wake up at 6 o'clock. You know that when schools are closed, students don't wake up at 6, they might wake up at 7, 7:30. So class at 8 is just nice. And it's only for 4 hours a day, because according to some research, its students or children should not be looking at the screen for longer than that in a day. Okay, now routines will give us a sense of normalcy, discipline, consistency, and organization. Okay, so that is the third point. And the fourth important point is for us to have professional development, collaboration, and networking. Right? Initially, when ERT was first activated, everyone was in a panicky mode. We all simply do not know what to do. But we are very lucky that some educational institutions like Swinburne University of Technology, Health University, and even the NIP agency came up with courses to help out teachers. Then you have our Ministry of Education as well as our State Education Department supporting us from there as well. Okay, they've set up online courses, workshops not to tell us what to do, but to share ideas with us that we can bring back and adopt into our own practice. Okay, you could also gain some ideas as well as resources from Facebook group and Telegram groups, right? But what I like most is YouTube and the Google search engine, because you could basically learn a lot of things there. Like initially, I do not know how to set up a quiz on Google Form. I do not know how to use a quizzes platform. So I would just go onto Google and YouTube and type out the keyword search that I was looking for. Right. And from all these different networking group that you have, apart from learning from each other, if nothing else happens, at least you get inspired by what other people are doing. It provides us with a support system. We know that we are not alone. Like, we don't feel like we are a failure when only 10 out of 40 students attended our class. Okay? Because it happens to all the other teachers as well. We are not the only one. Now, next we are going to look at assessment during ERT. From your experience, is it easy or difficult to assess students during ERT? During remote teaching, is it easy or is it difficult? You could vote it on the poll. All right. Meanwhile, while you're voting on the poll, I'll just read out a comment from Harold. There are a lot of internet sites and apps that can help us to do remote learning, but in the end, like what most of the teachers say, it depends on the teachers. Kudos to the teachers who did do remote teaching during the pandemic. And as for me, I was being the spectator on the sidelines, looking at all the teachers do the teaching while me recovering, wishing that I didn't broke my only laptop. Yes, that's very sad indeed, Hyrule. But don't worry, because I'm very sure remote teaching is not going to stop when school holidays, like when school holidays started next week. Because at least for the Form 3, the Form 2 and the Form 3 is going to happen again next year.
in January. Yes, that's right. I agree with you, Mahfizawati. They've mentioned that the schedules are not for students, they are also for the teachers. It gives us a consistent time to work and connect with our students. All right, and I've seen that 73% have voted. A lot of you mentioned that it depends. It is quite challenging to assess them online. Who is to know who actually sat for the test? And I do agree with that, but I'll come back to that concern in a short while. Okay. Most of you said 27% actually say that it depends on the students. 79% said it's more difficult as compared to physical face-to-face teaching. And only 3% say that it's easier than during physical face-to-face teaching. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, and as you can see, most of you think that it's more difficult. It is more difficult because it depends on the students. But personally, I'll tell you later why I think it's easier to assess students during remote teaching. Okay, I'm going to explain to you in a while on that. All right. So before we assess students during remote teaching, we need to ask a very important question. The most important question that you could ask is, why are you assessing during ERT? What is your purpose? Is it to guide students in the next lesson? Is it to modify your own teaching methods and materials? Because these two actually serves pedagogical purposes. If we do not assess our students, we will not know how we could help them for the next lesson, and we wouldn't know if our materials are too difficult or are they too easy, or if our teaching methods suck. We wouldn't know that, which is why we need to know why we are assessing them. And if we are evaluating students' achievement or progress at the end of a period of instructions, like your summative test, then that is a concern that I think Ms. Tan has pointed out just now. We do not know who actually sit for the test. Okay, but I'm going to get back to that in a while. Now, whatever you do during, whatever assessment that you did during ERT should not be used to place students, to select students, or to certify students, because it's just simply not fair to them. Not only we do not know who is actually in front of the computer answering the questions, we also wouldn't be able to ensure that everybody has the same access to technology. We wouldn't know that. Okay, so it is just unfair for the students to use the assessment result for other purposes apart from the first two. And the third one will lead to grading, but well, for me, that's a gray area. Okay. In language, there are only 4 things that we can access: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And if you want to add in vocabulary and grammar, by all means, add that in. Once we can answer these 2 questions, then we can ask ourselves, how can we assess the students? Okay, this would be the method. If our concern is on our pedagogical purpose, if our concerns is on our pedagogy, right, we want to help students in their learning, or we want to improve our own teaching, then our assessment will need to be built into each of our ERT session. It shouldn't be a separate thing altogether. But if our purpose is to grade the students or evaluate their achievement or progress at the end of a period of instruction, then it should be a separate summative test. Now, the difference is that if it is inbuilt into each ERT session, students have a chance to improve on their score. That's one. Number 2, if it is inbuilt into the ERT session, there would be given some sort of guidance or explanation on how to answer the question before they answer the real question itself. So for example, if you are giving them a writing task that is inbuilt into an ERT session, you would be telling students like how an article looks like, what is supposed to be on top, what sort of language to use, and you might provide them with a sample article which they could read first before they try to write their own article. So that would be inbuilt into the ERT session. But if you're giving them just a separate summative task, it will be like, the task is there, go write it. No explanation, nothing else. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, there are 3 different ways that we can assess them. We could be doing it on online digital platforms like Google Quiz. We could be doing it on a messaging platform like WhatsApp, or it could be paper-based. It's a bit contradictory here because during ERT, the students are not supposed to be in school. They're supposed to be at home. But how can it be paper-based then? All right, so some schools put up boxes in their school compound where the students or their parents could come to school, take it, and bring it back home to do it. Some teachers or schools actually go to the students and deliver it to them. So that could be done as well. So what are your concerns about assessment during ERT? Before I move on to my why, maybe you would like to share your concerns. So just now, Ms. Tan have shared with us that her concern is that we do not know who actually sat for the test. And I do agree with you. We do not know who actually sit for the test. And I think you're referring to the summative test here. Unless we want to do the test live, ask the kids to switch on their camera and do it. But then again, if you do that, more than half of your students wouldn't be able to sit for the test. They wouldn't be able to access it. So the result of your summative test at the end of the day should tally with their performance all the while during the physical classrooms, in the physical classroom, as well as tally with the inbuilt assessment that you have in the ERT session. Okay, does anyone else have other concerns about assessment during ERT? If you have, you can put it on the chat. Okay. Well, you can think about it and put it in the chat now. I'll get back to you if you have any concerns on that. And you could go about trying to solve those problems. Okay. Now, these are some of my assessment practice. So remember, during ERT, your job is not only as a teacher and assessor, you're also a troubleshooter. Because a lot of times, students will ask you, teacher, where to click, how to do that. Just yesterday, I've got a question from one of my students asking me, teacher, why is it that I could not click on the PDF file? So you'll have to find a way to answer them without offending them in a way. Otherwise, they will just disappear from the class. Now, so if it is inbuilt, it will be part of your teaching and learning process. It will be part of your ERT session. So it's exactly the same tool that I've used during my ERT session with the students. But if you're doing it as a separate summative test and your concern is that students might cheat, they might consult with their friends, they might try to find the answers in a book or online, you could actually time the students and see how long it takes them to answer the question. If it takes them too long, like takes them like 5 hours for a 1.5 hour test, you know that most probably the students are looking up the answer somewhere or they are consulting with their friends. Okay. For listening, the tricky part is to get the audio file to the students. There are 2 ways that I've used, that I've tried out. You can go about doing it. Is one, you embed the file as a link in your Google form and keep the original file in the Google Drive. Another way is, if you have a bit of video editing skill, is to convert the questions and the audio recording into a YouTube video. Okay, and you can upload it on YouTube and share it with the students. Now, I'm going to tell you why I find assessment during ERT easier if all the students participated. The key word here is if all the students participated. Number one, it's easier because using all these digital platforms provide us
with an auto scoring capability. Now, I do not have to check all the objective questions one by one. The computer will do everything for me. It also provides us with an auto analysis capability. You get a nice graph on the range of the student score, the average and the median, without having to run any analysis yourself because it's all online. And the best part is you actually get to keep the evidence. Because the evidence are automatically there. Sometimes you might just need to click one button, like the record meeting button, and you would be able to keep the student's speech during speaking task in class. Okay, and this would not happen in a physical classroom setting. You cannot just go about and put a camera there and ask the students to speak and record it, because the students would feel that it's awkward and they would not perform as how they're supposed to perform. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why I love assessment during the ERT. Okay. All right. And finally, we will need to learn how to pause, listen, reflect, learn, and grow. Because if we don't do that, we will be overwhelmed with a lot of things during ERT. And if you have done something for the day, even if just trying to learn how to use a particular digital tool, that is an achievement. Okay? You need to thank yourself and thank others as well. Once you start feeling grateful for whatever you have done and what other people have done, you will not feel that ERT is a burden. It is something that should not have happened. All right? And here are some references for your further reading. And before I end my session for the Q&A, I have 3 quiz questions for you, 3 surprises for you. The first question, okay? Now, the winner would be the one who type out their answers most accurately on the chat. Okay, here we go. The key to emergency remote teaching is frequent, fill in the blank. You could type the answers on the chat. And the first one, oops. Okay. Communication. That's right, David. So Sharon, please note that David have won the prize, the first prize. Yep, the answer is communication. The key to emergency remote teaching is frequent communication. And I'm very sorry, Ms. Hapsa. Problems viewing the materials because image resolution is poor. I'm not sure why the image resolution is poor. Okay. I'm really sorry about that. All right, second question. What is the most important question you could ask when assessing during ERT? Just type out the question. So what is the most important question that you could ask when you're trying to do assessment during ERT? Let's see if we have a second winner. Okay, the how, that's what Cikgu Bong said. Anyone else would want to give a try? Yes, a how is important. Okay, we have it there. That's right, Cikgu Esther. Why are we assessing? Actually, what Cikgu Esme said is a paraphrase of it.
That's right as well. What is the aim of the assessment? Okay, why are we assessing? What are we assessing? How do we assess? But the most important question of all that you should ask is, what is the aim of the assessment? So the second prize goes to Cikgu Asmei Mu. Okay, congratulations to the two of you. What are we assessing? The purpose of assessing. That's right, Cikgu Hafsa. So the first person who put that out is Cikgu Asmei. That's right. What is the aim of the assessment? Why are we assessing? So we should not be too concerned about students cheating during assessment, because students cheat all the time, even during classroom paper-based assessment, like paper-based tests. They cheat all the time. So that shouldn't be our main concern. So the most important question you could ask is, why are you assessing? If you're assessing for pedagogical purpose, there's no problem with that, and it should be encouraged. Okay, the third question. Now, this would need a bit of lengthy explanation. Have you learned anything in this session that could help you overcome the challenges you faced when teaching remotely during the pandemic? Please explain. And if I've not been very clear because of poor image resolution or just simply poor virtual online presentation skills, I'm very sorry. Okay, but have you learned anything in this session that could help you overcome the challenges that you faced when doing ERT? Okay, you might need a bit of time to put out the explanation, or you could just pop up with the main point, unmute your microphone, and explain it verbally. Okay, anyone who would like to try this? Okay, that's right. Cikgu Mafis said keeping a schedule while teaching remotely is easier said than done. Yes and no, because if you are the one creating the schedule, then it's very hard to keep trace. But if it is done by the school authority, like by the school administrator, then it's not that difficult. It's just like following your normal teaching schedule. Okay, learn as you go along, open to suggestions, collaborate, and be positive. Very good, Cikgu Adeline. That's right. I learned the need to adapt with the situation and find the best way to reach out to our students as much as we can. Okay. What I learned most is to have a variety types of assessment, especially when it comes to all the 4 language skills separately. Most importantly, to keep the teaching and learning going despite all the challenges. That's right. I have learned a lot from this lesson, especially delegating tasks to the learners. Moreover, the usage of technologies such as WhatsApp and other mediums to share the knowledge to others. Be flexible, depends on the situations, and always keep yourself updated to the students' progress, as well as to inform the parents. Oh, very good. Okay, I can see that most of you, or all those who have responded so far, have at least some takeaway message from this session. Okay. Very good, Cikgu Hafsa. You have used some of the apps that you've shared during that I have shared during this hard time. Yes, that's very good. But there are actually a lot more apps out there. There's just too many of them for us to explore. So if we have used a few of them to enhance our lesson or to help us solve some of our problems, that is very good already. Okay, be flexible, depends on the situation, and always keep yourself updated. Okay, read that out. A, I'm not sure what A means. I think it's just a half-send message. But okay, so I have quite a number of people who have responded to quiz 3. Sharon, shall we do a lucky draw for all these people from Cikgu Mafizawati, Adeline, Tan, Adam, Amir, Esther, Hafsa, and Cikgu Bong. Okay, she said she has used WhatsApp during this pandemic. All right, Sharon, can we do a lucky draw for all this to determine the winner? Because
Yes.
it'll be very hard for me to choose. Some have responded much longer, which is why it takes them a bit longer to type. Okay, so that's it for the quiz. But before you leave the session, do you have any questions for me? And I have a question for you. Are you prepared for the next ERT challenge? You can just
Hello,
try.
Madeline
Yes.
Co.
Yeah, hi.
Hello there, it's me here, Mr. Amir. May I have a look at your reference list for a moment?
Oh, sure. Okay. Hold on, yeah.
It's very interactive about the ERT.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
All right, thank you. That will be all.
All right. Thanks, no
Okay.
problem. I hope you find the references useful. They are
Yes, yes.
interesting reading.
It is very interesting resource.
Okay, cool. All right, anyone else has any question? You could just unmute and speak, or you could just type it out on the chat. Okay, such a fruitful session. Thank you. All right, thank you, Cikgu Hafsa. And thank you, Cikgu Tan. Thank you, Cikgu Asme. If you have any more questions for me, or any more comments, you could just type it on the chat or speak into the microphone. Okay? Or you could just send me an email. Okay, thank you, Mr. Yap. And here's my personal favorite quote: in the middle of difficulty lies opportunity. Okay, somebody mentioned, thank you for sharing. It's very useful for me as my student. They are living in the rural area. Yes, if your students are living in the rural area, it will be an extra challenge because they might not have good internet line, and you do not want your students to risk themselves going out, jungle trekking into a place that they can access to the internet. So maybe the homework delivery would be a more reliable method. Okay, thank you for sharing. Yes, thank you so much for listening. Okay. Thank you so much. All right, I'm glad that is an inspiration. And I'm glad that it's a meaningful session. I'm very sorry if the image resolution is poor, and I'm not sure why that happened, but I'll surely send this to the whole PowerPoint to sellers so that they can somehow match it up with the, I don't know if it can be done, but I'm sure technology will be able to do that, to match it up with my voice and put it up on as a recording on the website. Can that be done, Sharon?
Okay, I would like to thank you to Miss Madeline Ho for the amazing sharing, and thank you to the audience for spending your precious time with us.